Welcome. My name is Barney Reese. I'm the author of How Blessed You Are in God's Promises, and I'm actually reading it to you. So for those that want to listen, great. For those who don't, that's your choice. This has made me who I am today, and I hope you enjoy it. We're reading Your Joy, and this would be part 5. Well, we went on with our life and moved on with our life. Well, we made it in through the year, and Christmas was not the same. But I tried to put a false sense that it was, and Stephanie did also. I used my taxes to pay my expenses and resell those sales, and my mom had moved in with my sister and her husband for a while. She had managed to save some money, so I took her to an auction to buy a car, which I bought her a 1996 Cadillac for $500. I still had not sold anything, and later on it kept running hot. After driving it back from Hattiesburg, so I took it to the shop, and before I could get there, about a mile from the shop, the heater hose burst, and the scalding water landed on my right foot, which caused second-degree burns. I went to the doctor and was given Civardine and more pain medicine. I was helpless. My brother and 2 kids and his girlfriend came to my door while I was off work for a burnt foot. They had nowhere to go, and I said I could stay there if Stephanie agreed, and she did. I was home, so it would be okay. I even gave my room. Stephanie's mom would come from time to time, and Sandra, my brother, and girlfriend would talk. They knew each other from the prison. Well, I told you about demon possession. I did not understand it, and I went on with life, but I was helpless. I watched TV to say the least. Because of a burnt foot, I was unable to work. My brother was cutting my yard down as I had taken someone in to cut the trees down and use my money from the roof to pay him. I watched as I healed. All I could do was sit in the chair at night. I would watch Sandra stare at me for hours as though something hated me indefinitely. My brother was always blaming my wife for stealing her medicine. It was hell, to say the least. My wife got to where she would stay with her mother more frequently, and her drinking got worse. She was not coping well with the loss of her daughter to SIDS. I was helpless to stop at the time, for I still was mourning as well. My brother was not helping matters either, and all Sandra did was cause trouble about her medicine. My wife ended up going to another rehab center for drugs and alcohol in Meridian. Well, after everything I healed, I still loved my wife, but I was sleeping on the couch and was in torment. I told my brother they had to go. They had not put 1 cent in the house, and I was 3 months behind on my trailer note. I was still in business, but no matter how hard I tried, I could not make any money. I had only sold that 1 car, and that was the one my mom had brought. My wife came out of rehab yet again, and she was better. My foot was finally healed, and I could go to work. I had the heater cord disconnected and gave the car to Cornerstone Church when I was able to go back to church. I remember God's told me to give Pastor Tillman my only car, so reluctantly I did. After my wife came home after rehab, she moved out after only a few months with Byron and Sandra and moved in with her aunt. I had enough. I told them to go, and before my wife left, I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me to give them a week or I would have a stroke. I prayed to Jesus for strength, and I went to tell my brother and Sandra, you get out. My house is gone, my wife is gone, and you got to go now. They left, but only after threatening them with the law. I went to get my wife and go on with my life. She came back, and we went on our life. Somehow I survived and made it to yet another year. I still believed God was going to fix her, and her mom and sister had found another pill, Suboxone, an opiate blocker. This would stop pain, but may make you sick if you took an opiate or Xanax. My wife went to the doctor, but Kathy and her sister took her. I thought they knew best. After all, that was her mother and sister. My wife put on Suboxone, but she was taking more pills, but not Loratab, Xanax, Klonopin for general anxiety disorder. She always complained about pain and how her heart would bounce out of its chest. She smoked as many cigarettes as she could and drank Coca-Cola all the time. She was an addict. I thought this is what rehab did. I was still reading the Bible and trying to cope with my daughter. I was always watching my wife go into a spiral, and her drinking was better, but she still had not stopped. The medicine was the most important thing to her and her mother and sister, so when she needed it, she got it. I watched the Stephanie, the woman I knew and loved, come back for only a short time, and then she was gone again. I got to the point to where my son and her would go to see Kathy and Harold, who lived in a motor home in a drug-infected motor home park and seemed so on it to get by. I would have to leave her there because she was not coming home. I would take my son and go home without her many times. She would always call me, and I would go come get her. But somehow someone had taken her medication, but it was always not her fault. She would swear she was not going to drink, and I would believe her. Her medication we could fix, I said, but her drinking, I would not tolerate it no more. Get help, or we would be divorcing you shortly. My son deserves better. I had started to hate alcohol, period, and I would be extremely angry when you brought it home. I would open and pour her beers out in front of her, but it was as though we would bring her home. She always had beer. I would question Harold and Kathy why every time she is around you, she's drinking, but only when she is around you. I told all the stores nearby not to sell her beer, please, and they all agreed. Me and Stephanie went on with our life, and we were happy together. Her and my son had quite a bond. Kathy and Harold would come visit. We still went to Alcohol Anonymous meetings sometimes, and she was doing better. It would only be a short time, and as Harold and Kathy kept coming over, she would get worse. I watched my wife vanish again from my eyes. Remember, I was 3 months behind before I kicked my brother out. When my sister had bought my mom a Grand Marquis in the early 2000s, I had sold my first car for $3,000. I was a dealer, I thought. I'm successful. I used the money to pay my house note. I had gotten rid of Byron and Sandra after 6 months. I had my wife and son, and we would make it. God would provide, and he did. Thank you, Jesus. Well, my brother and his friend had cut the majority of the trees off of the property, so it was clear cut. I focused on resale sales and giving my wife something to do. All I had to do was buy some cars. I had moved my lot to the back after putting some gravel there and moving my sign to the front yard. Resale sales was coming around. My brother and his girlfriend would leave me and Stephanie alone, so one day after I was gone, they decided to have Stephanie let Byron borrow Harold's trailer. So Byron, my brother, could do roofing jobs. I thought no harm in letting Stephanie go with them. So I said, okay. I really don't know how it happened, but somehow Byron had turned the trailer over on her head while he was going down a hill. I had a phone call at work, and my wife was in an accident. I needed to go see her immediately and address the emergency room. They had brought to UMC, University Medical Center in Jackson. While in the waiting room, they had to sew her scalp on while her mother stood there and helped the doctors. And she had a scar on her left cheek, and her car was damaged. And her ear was damaged, but she was still very beautiful. She ended up staying another night for x-rays to make sure she was okay. After a while, a 12-foot cast iron trailer had landed on her head, and she was lucky to be alive, and she had a blood clot in her brain that if it moved, she would die. It was too close to the brain to operate. I was still reading the Bible daily and believed in miracles. I still believed the Creator of the universe would provide, so prayer was the answer. Well, Kathy and Harold would take it to themselves to help Stephanie with plastic surgery and the recovery process. At the end, they cut off a tip of her ear. That was all they accomplished. However, they did do anything. Byron and Sandra, it was not their fault. For a time, Stephanie did not drink, and it was doing better. The next incident was the next year. I was trying to sell the car, and it was cold. I went to February 2010. My brother came to my door one night, and his girlfriend and his 2 kids for a place to stay for a few weeks. I agreed me. And Stephanie, of course, Sandra started acting like Stephanie and her was best friends. Well, my brother was still my brother. Kathy and Harold would still come by, and Brock and Kelsey, my brother's kids, would try to steal Kathy's medicine while she was talking to Sandra. My brother had bought a truck, and I was using my mom's car, which I had sold her, till I could get another one, and Sandra took a Dodge Ram diesel truck and ran over my mother's car. I thought, how could this be really? And I had to get insurance to pay for it. It took me almost a month to do this. Because the adjuster wondered why I took so long to make the claim, and the reason it was bad weather. He did not pay me to fix the car, and I decided to put a hood and fender on it and drive it some more, which I did. I told my mother, I do not know if I can fix this car, so I took it back. I do not remember how, but Stephanie had gone to her mother to stay. I guess Byron Sanders was too much for her. Kathy had convinced me that it was the best since the accident to take care of her daughter and her ear and scalp. It had only been a night, and I was always there, was dropping her back off to help to fix her yet again. This time it was far worse. They had dropped her off the bridge, walking distance from home. She was almost hit by cars crossing the bridge, thinking she was some clothes that was in the middle of the road. She was intoxicated, and Sandra had went down to see what was going on, and I guess that Stephanie, hearing Sandra's voice, woke up and said, "Bitch, get out of my home."